Hello and welcome to Your Health Reclaimed with DrPND, where we help you reclaim your health with tips, tools, and resources to live your most optimal and vibrant life. Here's your host, DrPND.
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Your Health Reclaimed podcast. This is your host, DrPND. Today we're going to talk about something a lot of people struggle with, something that I see and deal with a lot in my practice, and that is heartburn and acid reflux. And specifically, we're going to talk about the medications the doctors often prescribe for it. They're called PPIs, or proton pump inhibitors. You probably have heard of them by the names of things like Prilosec, Nexium, Protonix, and etc. The generic names for Prilosec is omeprazole. For Nexium, it's esomeprazole, and for Protonix, it is pantoprazole. So a lot of prazoles. that's included. You're taking proton pump inhibitors, but regardless whether you're taking something generic or brand, they're the same thing. That's what they're designed to do. These medications are all proton pump inhibitors, and they are prescribed and used to reduce stomach acid, obviously. Well, millions of people take these medications every day, and some people have taken it for years, if not decades, thinking that they are helping their health. But here's the thing. While they can stop the burning temporarily and offer temporary relief to people, they may also be silently harming your heart and blood vessels. And this is what this episode is all about today, the hidden risk of acid reflux medications and how they can lead, among many other things, to cardiovascular disease. And this is the message that I want to portray to you guys today, to be really mindful and aware of the reality of things. And when you're dealing with these medications and you're taking them chronically, this is not for somebody who's taking them for, a few weeks, few months, or perhaps even a year or so. But this is a message for people that have taken them chronically or plan to take them long-term chronic use, consistent use. But this is the message is for you guys. So I really want to present the facts and for you guys to think about the reality of and the consequences of what can happen. So in this episode, I really want to unpack how these drugs work, what research really says about the risks, and most importantly, what you can do instead to fix reflux at the root cause. So let's talk about a little bit of how PPIs work. So how these drugs really work? Well, ultimately, they shut down the proton pumps in your stomach lining. Okay, that's what it boils down to. Those pumps are what makes and produces your stomach acid. Contrary to popular belief, acid isn't a bad thing. It's actually very essential for health, and it's absolutely necessary. We actually need it. And really, we need it really bad. Stomach acid is extremely important for healthy digestion. It breaks down proteins, helps us to absorb nutrients like B12 and magnesium, and kills harmful pathogens before they get into the intestine. As a matter of fact, a strong, healthy acid is going to be your first line of defense against any kind of foodborne pathogens. That's why you almost always never see people that have healthy, strong acid production and digestion get really sick, and if they do something that is very minor. That's why you can have two people going out to a restaurant eating the same exact food, same plate. One of them, nothing happens, and the other one gets violently sick with vomiting, diarrhea, you name it. Or at the most, the other person maybe gets a little bit of a diarrhea, nausea for an hour or so, and they're fine, as opposed to the other people. The other person might have to go into to the hospital, to the ER, or at least be out of commission for a day or two or more. This is one of the biggest reasons why, because they have a strong digestion and strong, healthy, normal acid function that prevents that. So that's something to really think about. Okay. Well, um, one of the things also that I want to talk about, stomach acid, is that a lot of people have a really negative connotation towards that. They think it is a bad thing. So please understand, it is not bad at all. You need it, and you need it badly. Just understand that concept, because just the way mainstream medicine has portrayed it is acid equals bad. Acid is a bad thing itself. It actually is very, very vital for your health. So when you take PPIs, you're basically flipping the off switch, right? Acid goes that way down, and the symptoms of particularly the burning and the pain that come with it, usually go away. But the real problem isn't solved. It's like putting duct tape over your car's check engine light. Sure, you don't see the light anymore, but the real problem is under the hood. That's still there. It's not fixed, and it's getting worse. So ultimately, you're just continually managing symptoms and never addressing the root cause. So let's talk about next the hidden heart risks that are associated. Okay, so here's where things get serious. Let's talk about what these drugs actually do to your heart and blood vessels. First up, nitric oxide. All of you guys have heard about nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is like your WD-40 for your arteries. I know it's a funny analogy, but it keeps them smooth, flexible, and open. PPIs will interfere with nitric oxide production and even block your stomach from turning certain foods into nitric oxide. And what you have to understand is that without enough nitric oxide, your arteries stiffen, blood pressure goes up, and the risk of clots and heart attacks actually rises. Now, again, that doesn't happen from one time or a few weeks or months, but eventually of long-term chronic consumption, it will happen to some degree or another. Number two, the second thing, the vascular aging. Studies show that PPIs actually make the cells that line your blood vessels age fast. It's like imagine being 40, but your arteries are like in their 80s. They get stiffer, more inflamed, and plaque builds up a lot more efficiently and faster on them. Number three, nutrient depletion. These drugs can and will drain important nutrients, like magnesium, for example, which is critical for normal heart rhythm. Magnesium is one of the macrominerals that PPIs will, inhibit and will deplete fast. And again, everybody knows how important it is for proper and healthy heart rhythm. They can also reduce your absorption of vitamin B12, which your nerves and blood cells need. Think of it like having a bank account, basically. Every time you take a PPI, you're basically making a withdrawal of key nutrients. So if you never deposit, those nutrients back in, eventually the account runs dry, and ultimately, in this case, your heart pays the price. I'm just trying to illustrate the best I can, for you guys to understand that. Number four, okay, the gut microbiome. Okay, that's another hidden risk. Your gut is like a healthy, brilliant garden. That's when you have a healthy gut microbiome. Acid in a kind of like a simile, it helps keep the weeds under control. So when you block the acid, the weeds, meaning the harmful bacteria, take over, choking out healthy ones. So when ultimately your proverbial garden is out of balance, inflammation spreads throughout the body, including your cardiovascular system. This is why, you're seeing a lot of, gut brain connection, gut skin connection, gut, heart connection. This is why, because when you start having chronic inflammation, systemic, which always begins in the gut, you will eventually, have it in other tissues. And what is, very vulnerable is the single cell layer epithelial tissue of the blood vessels and the heart. And this is very important, to understand that. So this is why, guys, pretty much any topic we talk about, it'll always include, to some extent or another, the health of the gastrointestinal system. So, like Hippocrates, famous saying goes, a long time ago, is that every chronic disease begins in the gut, and that's very true. Directly or indirectly is extremely true. So, there's very important concept to understand, and I really hope you guys do. Now, next, we also have the kidneys. Okay, so here we are. There's the kidneys. Proton pump inhibitors are linked to chronic kidney disease. And here's the kicker. When kidneys break down, the heart follows. Okay. Every one of you guys knows this or has known somebody who has had, kidney dialysis, and when they go, it's a heart attack. It's heart disease. You will never have healthy kidneys and, heart disease, and you'll never have heart disease and having healthy kidneys. Healthy kidneys at the same time. They'll go hand in hand. Remember, holistic medicine, holistic health, everything's connected. Okay. That's a very important aspect, to understand. So again, when the kidneys break down, the heart follows. So your kidneys are like the filters in your car. If they get clogged, everything else starts to fail. Yeah. If you don't believe me, ask somebody who's been on dialysis 3 days a week and they miss a day or something happens, and see how they feel and how they look and actually what happens. So you will real quickly find out. Kidney disease is one of the strongest drivers of heart disease. So this connection is a big deal, as I said before. So these are some of the consequences of those drugs. And people pump those drugs like candy. So let's talk about the real cause of reflux. Okay, here's the twist, really. Reflux isn't usually about too much acid. In fact, a lot of times the opposite. Not enough strong acid. The molality, which is the strength of the hydrochloric acid, is not high enough. So the body has to actually produce more of it, and that overspills. So when the liver also is overloaded, or bile isn't flowing well, digestion slows down. Food sits longer in the stomach, pressure builds up, and acid pushes back up to the esophagus. That's why I see a lot of people don't have good hydrochloride production. When they eat, they feel this fullness and even pressure in the upper abdomen, where your stomach is. And the food feels like it just sits there. Okay, that's your typical scenario of low digestive enzymes and low stomach acid, or weak stomach acid, I should say more appropriately. And this is what happens. So it's not that you've got too much acid, it's the digestive traffic. It technically is jammed up, if you want to kind of call it that. So PPIs will not fix that. They just turn off the acid and ignore the traffic jam, if ultimately what it boils down to. So, meanwhile, the proverbial jam gets worse, and the ripple effect on the gut and the liver can create even more problems long term, and they always do. So I just understand that. If you guys care, it'll be really helpful if you do understand that, and if you're taking those drugs long term, to really start to think about the long term consequences. Well, so here's the evidence. What does the research really actually show? Well, first of all, mechanistic studies. These are studies that it's a lab and cellular data, ultimately, show that PPIs block nitric oxide and damage the lining of the arteries. Bottom line. Large population studies find that people who stay on PPIs for years and decades on end have much higher rates of heart attacks, strokes, kidney disease, and early death. Randomized clinical trials like the COGENT, C-O-G-E-N-T study very strongly suggest the short-term use might be relatively safe, but long-term, the evidence clearly shows a lot of red flags, which is something that we've known for a while. So to be clear, sometimes short bursts of PPIs can be appropriate for sure. Okay, not a problem with that. These drugs are never meant to be used chronically long term for years and decades on end, but they definitely can be prescribed properly for appropriate time, sequence, and frame to be used. But again, staying on them for years, which so many people do, is where the risk skyrockets, and without fail, people end up paying a price. Remember, when chronic disease happens, when chronic issues happen, this is not something that you're going to see or feel or be able to measure in some kind of test. these are slow grind, slow cooking processes, and that damage takes place subliminally, subconsciously, as the weeks, months, and years go by without even you noticing anything. And when the actual damage shows up, that has been going on for a very long time. So again, these are slow grind, slow cooking, issues that take place, and that's why people don't see them, they don't feel them, they can't really tell them until often it's too late when they have a substantial problem. Kind of sneaks up on them. So anyway, let's talk about what to do instead. Okay, so instead of just patching up the issue, just putting a band-aid on it, managing a symptom, what can we do instead? So if acid reflux isn't an acid problem, then what can you actually do about it? Well, the answer is really, again, fixing the root cause or causes, because they can be few, and addressing those root causes will allow your body to heal and for you to be well in your way to health. So let's talk about what are the things. Well, first and foremost, you have to support your liver and bile flow. Okay, even people that don't have gallbladder, they're even more prone to those problems. They present even a whole bunch of other issues because they don't have the gallbladder to store those bile acids, which are very important for many things. So you have to support the liver and proper bile flow. That way you keep the digestion moving properly. Very important. I can't get into what that looks like because the simple fact that it can be multifactorial it's different for different people. That can be doing appropriate detoxification and cleanse protocols, depending on what they need. It really, really depends. But I'm just giving you here bottom lines of, things to think about and, address. So support your liver and bile flow. Goes without saying, heal your gut lining and restore a balanced microbiome. Restoring a healthy gut, as I've talked about this millions of times, restoring a healthy gut lining is extremely important part of recovering from heartburn and GERD. Chronic stress, bacterial overgrowth, and certain medications such as steroids, NSAIDs, and aspirin can damage and will damage the lining of the stomach, especially the way people pop those medications. They're like literal candy. Same thing, just like the PPIs, these medications can be extremely helpful in acute situations, and they're designed to be used at appropriate times for appropriate length of time and the appropriate dosing for the person. But they were never meant to be used on a month to month, year to year, let alone decade to decade basis, like a lot of people do. Okay, you ask any emergency room physician, and they'll tell you that, if not the most common, a very common top 5 reasons people come to the ER with poison is Tylenol, okay, or NSAIDs, aspirin. Again, the use is rampant, and that's what causes lining damage. So since it is the mucosal lining of the stomach that protects it from its own acid, a damaged stomach lining can and will cause irritation, pain, and ultimately ulcers, okay, which can lead to bleeding, and that can lead to anemia and other issues. On and on it goes. Okay, if you look at the warning bottle of any of the aspirin or NSAIDs like Tylenol, like ibuprofen, Proxen, any of those NSAIDs, and you will see danger of bleeding. Well, how does bleeding happen? Because that lining gets damaged by those drugs, and bleeding happens. It's really simple. Okay, so moving on. We have to replenish nutrients. Nutrients commonly depleted by chronic PPIs include the following. All right, vitamin B12. Okay, PPIs lower stomach acid, which ultimately is required to separate B12 from food proteins. That's why B vitamin is found mostly in animal-based protein foods. Okay, that's why if you're vegan, vegetarian, these people run into potential problems for deficiency if they don't supplement properly or they're cognizant of eating that. But because B12 is bound in food proteins from animal sources. That takes strong, healthy stomach acid to separate the B12 and ultimately, which is part of healthy, strong digestion. All right. So these people, again, when they have a deficiency B12, they risk fatigue, anemia, nerve problems, cognitive decline, all things which ultimately will stress the heart. Okay. Number 2, magnesium. Hypomagnesemia is a well-documented risk of long-term PPIs use. You don't believe me? Look it up. Okay, risks include muscle cramps, weakness, abnormal heart rhythm, seizures. The abnormal heart rhythm is a big one because that too will cause damage to the heart, the actual organ itself. And magnesium is a big problem. We all know we have a massive deficiency epidemic of magnesium. Number 3, calcium. Acid is needed for optimal calcium absorption, especially calcium carbonate. So the risks are obviously low bone density and high risk of fractures among us, but also calcium is important in regulating muscular contraction as well as the contraction of your heart, which of course is a big muscle. It's a very powerful muscle that does not stop. So all these things people don't think about, but they add up over time. Number 4, iron. Stomach acid helps convert dietary iron into a form the body can absorb. That's simple. Known risks: iron deficiency anemia, which is not uncommon, fatigue, weakness. When you have anemia, you're stressing your heart out. The heart has to work much harder. Okay. When you have general fatigue from that again stresses your heart. And a lot of bad things can happen. So I hope you're starting to see how PPI use causes indirectly damage to the heart. Okay. Another very important mineral, number 5, is zinc. Now it's less consistently reported, but it's still there. And acid suppression will impair zinc absorption as well. So zinc is important. Very important, obviously, for immune function, which is extremely important for wound healing and altered taste, smell. But immune function is extremely important because when that happens, you become more prone to infections, pathogens, other issues, which that too will stress the heart and cause issues. So the indirect side effects, are more. Reduced stomach acid ultimately changes the gut microbiome, okay, which will alter the absorption of other trace and microminerals and vitamins as well, not just those. To a lesser extent, but nonetheless, again, we're talking about chronic, heavy, consistent use for years and decades. Back to the decreased protein digestion efficiency. That can lead indirectly, to an impact amino acid availability in your system. That is why even if people are eating technically enough protein from high quality sources like pasture-raised eggs and poultry, grass-fed meats, and wild-caught seafood, they still might be deficient in amino acids. I see this problem a lot in my practice, especially when I run the GI stool tests and OMX metabolomics tests. I see a deficiency of amino acids and substantial weak and insufficiency of hydrochloric acid, digestive enzymes, and bile acids. So that means, again, they're not breaking down the proteins, which are extremely important. Now, boosting nitric oxide naturally, okay, that's something that is very important to understand. You can take supplements. There's a lot of supplements. One of the easiest ways to do that, and the healthiest, hands down, which has multiple benefits, is literally eating organic leafy greens and beets. Chew them very well. That build up in the saliva when you're chewing the leafy greens and the beets, that actually is what activates release that nitric oxide and gets absorbed into your salivary glands, into mucosa, into the mouth. and then obviously whatever you swallow into the stomach. And it is a very effective way. You can look it up, chewing well leafy greens and eating a lot of leafy greens. That's why a big reason why people say eat leafy greens, and nobody's going to argue that, because it does. Beets. If you don't like to eat beets, you can eat, juiced beets, organic red beets. Use the beet tops as well. That has other benefit. Juice those. That too is a phenomenal, large source and influx of nitric oxide. Again, they're really high quality supplements in the market as well. Just be careful that there are no artificial sweeteners, preservatives, coloring agents, and so forth. Exercise, high intensity cardiovascular exercise, high intensity, progressive resistance, weight bearing exercises, an excellent way to release nitric oxide. And sunlight. All those things are very easy, cheap, and in my opinion, hands down the best ways to boost and optimize nitric oxide on a daily basis without having to take supplements. Now, it's some people, depending on the issue and depends, what is going on with them, that might have to need supplementation for some time. But these are some ways that can really make a difference. Lifestyle matters a lot. One of the big problems with people who have acid is avoiding eating right before bed, and especially eating after 8 o'clock. Digestion substantially slows down after, depending, but 7, 8 o'clock. And when people eat at night, which oftentimes with our busy schedules and hectic lifestyles, we tend to overeat. People go right to bed or lay down. That is the worst thing you can do if you struggle with, GERD and acid reflux. So eat 2 or 3 hours before you actually lay down and go to bed. Eat a lighter meal that is easier digestible, like a nice luscious salad with vegetables, some healthy fats, a good, organic source of grass-fed meat or poultry, wild-caught seafood. Easily digestible, nutrient-dense, well-balanced, light. So, these things matter. Behavior matters. It matters a lot. Okay, so instead of pigging out on pizza or people eat chili with bread and other garbage, which a lot of people eat at night, or big pasta balls or whatever it might be, let alone the processed junk food. That is the worst thing you can do if you're struggling with acid reflux or GERD, and then go to bed. So these behavior changes are simple, they're free, but you just have to implement. You have to have the discipline to do that. Okay. Also, elevating the head of your bed if reflux wakes you up at night, that helps a lot. Identifying your potential trigger foods. Often, for most people, is a lot of spicy, greasy. And when I say greasy, a lot of the grease, believe it or not, is from industrial seed vegetable oils, and not the healthy saturated fat from a grass-fed steak or some kind of grass-fed organic meat or poultry or egg or wild seafood, but it's from processed seed oils. Okay, that's horrible for digestion. It's horrible for your body to begin with, but that's horrible for digestion. And especially combine that with eating late at night, it's just a recipe for disaster. Another thing that I see a lot is food sensitivities, not allergies. A lot of people still confuse allergies or intolerances with food sensitivities, different things. And these testing, doing a comprehensive, high-quality test of food for food sensitivities and identifying those foods that you're sensitive to, highly sensitive to, can be a very simple and effective, easy way to improve, and oftentimes drastically improve your acid reflux. So test for food sensitivities. Focus on whole, nutrient-dense, organic foods. Okay, at least whole, nutrient-dense foods. If you can't get organic, it's the next best thing is going to be whole foods, but can get conventional. It's okay. Steady meal timing. Instead of eating sporadic at different times throughout the week, have your meals be steady. Okay, within an hour or two difference the most. All right, and enough hydration. I cannot tell you how people are literally walking around and having a low chronic dehydration. And low-grade dehydration, you're not going to feel. Just like a great fatigue or something, performance-based, especially if you're not exercising, especially if you're not doing anything physical, but kind of sitting in an air-conditioned or climate-controlled space in an office, you're not going to feel it. But people walking around chronically dehydrated, and water is extremely important for hydrochloric acid. Okay, go back to your basic chemistry and look what hydrochloric acid is made of. You need water to have that. And when you're chronically dehydrated, you struggle. That's why oftentimes people think they're hungry or they're craving, where in fact they're actually dehydrated. So stay hydrated. Well, make it a point. It's better to be overhydrated than dehydrated. So again, these aren't quick fixes like popping a pill, unfortunately, but they actually solve the traffic jam like we talked about. They actually solve the root cause of the problem instead of just covering up, the symptoms. So I really want you guys to hopefully understand and think about this, because it's very important, okay? So here's the takeaway, okay? PPIs make quite the heartburn in your chest, but they don't fix the reflux. They don't fix the root cause of the problem. And the long-term cost can be steep. Faster vascular aging, nutrient depletion, gut problems, kidney damage, and a lot higher risk of heart disease. The truth is, reflux isn't really an acid problem. It's a gut and liver problem. That's what it boils down to. And if you deal with those root causes, you not only fix the reflux, you protect your heart, your kidneys, and your long-term health ultimately. So if you're taking PPIs, don't just stop cold turkey. Okay, that's another mistake people make. Talk with a practitioner, somebody who's qualified, who understands how to taper off safely, and at the same time, how to get the underlying issues resolve the root cause that we talk about. Okay, so I hope you guys learned something about the PPIs and how they relate to, problems, especially heart disease. And I hope that was, educational for you. So thank you for tuning in today. Remember, your body knows how to heal when you give it the right support. Okay, take care of your gut, your liver, your heart, and they'll take care of you. That's what it boils down to. So if you guys have any questions, please contact us at drpnd.com. That's drpnd.com. We offer a free consultation to see how we can help you reclaim your health naturally by addressing the root cause. And I hope you guys have a wonderful and blessed day. And until next time.
Thank you for your valuable time and for listening to the Your Health Reclaimed podcast with Dr. PND. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and share this episode with a person you know it can help. If we can help you in any way, or you would like to connect with Dr. PND, please visit drpnd.com. That's drpnd.com.